What it is. How's it going, everybody? Today, we're going to be talking about movie adaptations. We're going to be talking about all types of movies, from the ones based off books to the ones based off comic books to the ones based off of Twitter threads and all the other different sources you could find. We're going to be talking about all the stuff, you know, how crazy it is, what makes them good, what makes them bad. So if you want to hear what we have to say, sit back, relax, grab a beverage, grab a snack, and listen on in. The first ones to die. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the first ones to die. I am your host, Jerome. As you can tell, Jonathan's not here, or else he'd be doing this. He is currently out doing very important things. Some might even say it's very top secret, classified, if you will. So we're not going to tell you, but just know he will be back next week. So if you're missing him, don't worry. He's still alive. But in the meantime, we do have one of our consistent hosts who's awesome, one Alex. So Alex, how you doing?
I'm good, and I'm guessing you didn't really listen to last week's episode because he did say where he was going to everybody.
See, I honestly did listen to it, and I honestly forgot.
I'm
been
sure.
I was out of town.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You know, one of the hosts doesn't really listen when he's not on it. But anyway, I'm doing good. My mom's in town right now. We just saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I really enjoyed it. There was something that really got me, and if you want to see the movie, spoiler alert, the hot dog finger thing, that you can actually buy them. Take it to. I don't want to buy them.
Yeah, you can go to like A24 sells them. You can buy them on their website and have hot dog fingers.
Mom,
I want to know what they
you
feel
know
like.
You can buy the hot dog fingers. No, she says no. My mom said no. How was LA, Jerome?
It was great. It was a fantastic time. DC Comics, for those who don't know, I'm part of the Milestone Initiative, which is an initiative being done by DC Comics to help usher in the next generation of BIPOC and LGBT, really all marginalized groups, creators into the comic book world. They've been doing a great job. It's been a fantastic experience. So last week we did our Milestone Initiative Summit in person, where we got to meet everybody, mingle, collab with so many different people, and learn so much about the industry, but also get to meet all our classmates. So it was a fun time. I had a great time. My classmates, or we keep calling ourselves a cohort, are fantastic. Can't wait to see what all of them do in the future, whether that be in comics or elsewhere, and vice versa. And we just really supportive of each other. So it feels like a little family that we've cultivated through this program. And yeah, it was awesome. Plus, also got to spend time with Jonathan while I was in Burbank as well. So it was good to see him in person instead of over a virtual screen, as I often do every week.
Yeah, you guys got to go out. Speaking of cohorts, we have an old cohort guest starring today. I don't think I said that word correctly, but go on.
This is true. We have the return of one Kalen Knowles. For those who have been a longtime listeners, you would recognize his voice. He was on our Falcon and Winter Soldier review. So, Kalen, how you doing? Welcome back.
Hey, thank you. I'm doing great. Thanks for adapting to the situation and having me on.
I hate all of you.
Good to have you. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
That, I guess, Kalen's bad jokes has allowed us to segue into our topic for the day, which is adaptation. You know, we're talking about, for those who don't know, we actually just had recently, or at least at the time of this recording, the most recent adaptation movie to come out is a big one. It's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which we will do a review for next week. So be on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, we wanted to talk about adaptation and that sort of thing, because it's like we seem to be getting a lot of adaptations more and more every year. And now with the theater starting to open back up, given the reactions to the pandemic and, with the vaccine and everything out there, a lot of those movies that got pushed back are starting to come back out. Movies that were new are starting to rise. Heck, we finally saw the legendary and illustrious Avatar 2 trailer recently for the first time, something I thought for sure didn't exist. So, things are changing. And so I figured it'd be a great time for us to talk about that because we have never talked about it. So I guess I'll initiate to you guys with just a question of what are some of your favorite adaptations that we've gotten so far? And I'll start with Alex.
Well, I'm more focused always on the books to movies adaptations of things. One of my favorite movies is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One of the worst adaptations ever on film. There were so many things missing. But at the same time,
I have many responses to that.
I see you. I see that you're getting all bouncy. But I still loved it. It was still one of my favorite movies. And even though the main character Arthur Dent was not in any way like the actual book version of Arthur Dent, I still liked it. But no, it was a terrible, terrible adaptation of it. What do you have to say, Caitlin? I see you bouncing.
Well, okay, so just going back to the term adaptation, that's something I was thinking about when you asked me to be on this podcast, is like when I think of an adaptation, I think of it's adapting like a singular work onto the screen. So something like you mentioned the new Doctor Strange movie, I wouldn't really consider that an adaptation because there's no like Doctor Strange comic that it's specifically adapting. But what would I consider it? I don't know. So I'm calling it an adaptation. I think that's just an interesting like distinction to look at. If it's
because I think of it as an adaptation the same way, but only because it's pulling from different books. With comic book characters, there's so many books. It's hard to pick a singular one, and even when you do, given Marvel is very specific. Because it's a universe, so they're pulling from multiple stories and then trying to weave in other stories that aren't involving the character whose movie it is, so that it all ties together like the comic books do. So it's a bit of a weird gray area, but I still would consider that adaptation because it's a previously already existing character in a different medium being brought to a new medium, which is film and TV.
I can see what both of you are saying, but actually I'm kind of siding more with Kaylin because the Doctor Strange and the Multi-Universe Madness is kind of more of a branch off of what the original adaptation was, which was like the Avengers or the individual movies they had with Captain America and Winter Soldier, the Iron Man. Those are kind of the adaptations, and then they grew into whatever nonsense is going on over here now. Because they have almost become their own characters, kind of like when we were talking about Spider-Man and how he originally didn't shoot webs from his arm or his wrist, and they adapted the comic books to fit the movie instead. So the comic books became their own adaptations of the movies. There's Cheddar with his raccoon butt.
Well, I will also, just going back to what you were saying, Alex, about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is that's one of my favorite adaptations, which, is completely goes against what I was just saying, because it's, that's a several book series.
Right, but they really do only focus on the main on the main book or the first book.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. So I was like, maybe if something is just capturing the spirit of the original work, that's when I think it's a good adaptation, not necessarily how exactly faithful it is, but that's why I would consider Man of Steel to not be a good adaptation of the Superman character, because I don't think that movie harnesses the nature of Superman as I know him to be in the comics.
It's true. I've watched recently, my new popcorn thing from YouTube is watching react channels, in which the new thing for before it was reactions to YouTube, and now it's like the new reaction fad is people watching like popular movies for the first time or rewatching movies for the first time, or rather rewatching movies that they've only seen once, and so they don't remember it very well. And there was one where it was this couple and they were watching Watchmen for the first time, but they've never read the book. They don't know the source material, and so watching them like try and like figure out what's going on, but because the Watchmen movie is missing so much of the subtext from the graphic novel, there's so much that they missed or were confused about of like, oh, are they superheroes? Maybe they have superpowers or whatever. I'm like, no, that's the problem. They're not supposed to have superpowers. But it's the adaptation that it's the only one that exists. So that's what and if you're only watching that, that's all you have to go off of. Yeah. But I was going to you actually were touched on something that I was going to lean into, which was as my next question, which was what makes a good or bad adaptation in you guys' opinions? For me, it's always just been, I think for me, it's case by case. Cause like, I love the dedication that goes into making something like Watchmen, where that movie, despite like the subtext in the script not being there, visually, it is the book. Like, verbatim. Right. There are full shots in that movie that are just ripped from the panels of the graphic novel. And I do love stuff like that. But then I also think about something like a Jurassic Park, where that movie is nothing like the book as far as story wise, but it captures the spirit of Jurassic Park, which is why a lot of people still love it anyway. Mm-hmm. So what do you guys think as like makes a good or bad adaptation?
I do think like harnessing the character of the book is a good thing. I don't know, like with Miss Marvel coming up, in the powers she like stretches out and like turns big, but in the show she just has like crystal forms around her hands, which like I'm open to that idea. As someone who loves stretchy powers, I'm bummed to not see them, but like as long as they keep her character and like that world the same, like I don't really care if her powers are like a little different. I think yeah, it is just like a case by case basis where like you can change, this thing as long as you get this thing right, or you can, cut out that scene as long as you, or maybe that whatever this hypothetical scene didn't really fit in the original story. Now that you've cut it out, like going back to Watchmen, the whole like ending with like a nuclear blast instead of a giant squid falling on the city, some say that makes a little more sense to a general audience.
Yeah, where would a giant squid come from?
It's a whole thing. They like make it using like actors and like great effects, and then they do like a bunch of other stuff. It's a whole thing. It's very elaborate. And the book, even in the book, like, because it's a comic book, like there's a lot of, it's Alan Moore, so it's always a lot of words, but and even in the book, there's just a lot of words to explain this squid real quick.
Right.
Because it just, if you're not paying attention, you would easily flip over and get to the end of the book and be like, what the hell? There's a squid now? Where'd the squid come from? Why is everyone dead?
What you guys read is quite interesting. I think what you're right, Caleb. It's a lot of those, like, there's important moments in like books, graphic novels, and things like that where it's important, that everybody who's reading it knows the scene is important. And if you don't have those important moments, it kind of feels, well, how did the main character really get here if you just took away all that? A horrible adaptation, and I think everybody can agree to this, was Avatar: The Last Airbender. They took out basically everything. I mean, he got to the water bending village on the other side of the world basically in like no time, and just like they took out everybody's personal growth, and they couldn't even say the characters' names correctly. So that was a horrible attitude. Also, being able to say the proper characters' names would be nice. Yeah, it feels like a character that's been said to me even in cartoons should probably be able to still say that. So I think they took out such major moments of revelation and just real struggles that would have developed the main character into the person that you loved and who ended the story the way they did. You take that all out, and then you're like, well, I know they wouldn't turn out this way because you took their challenges from them.
Yeah, and also it's a thing where, especially in the last Airbenders case, you can tell they didn't have the budget to do what they needed to do, because like I remember watching that movie for the first time, and they get to that they do the earthbending story in which they find that village where all the firebenders are kidnapping the earthbenders to like make this village week. And they do that scene in the, first of all, they failed in that, like, the story made sense in the cartoon because they take those earthbenders and put them on a ship in the ocean made of metal. So it's like they can't use their powers because they're nowhere near any earth. And what does the movie do? Oh, they're in a prison camp on the ground. It's like, okay, they can break out at any time if they really wanted to. They're just so demoralized. But even then, when they do break out, it takes 6 men to earthbend one little rock, like one rock, and then launch it. And the 7th person to launch it into the firebender person. And I remember watching the movie being like, in the cartoon, it takes 1 person and they could like tear down an entire city.
Toph ends up being like a metal bender because of strength Toph and power.
Is incredible. Boomy, before we even get to Toph, Boomy can like destroy an entire nation if he wanted to.
There's literally a character called Boulder because he can move boulders.
Well, I think that's something that studios are learning, is to not try and adapt something long form into something short form, because like that's not going to do anyone any
It's
favor.
You're not gonna have the time.
Yeah,
like you're not gonna have the time to get like to do it justice enough so that the money you think you could make, you'll actually make. And on top of that, it'll do a disservice to, like, if you do have like a passionate director who does love the story, but they don't have the budget to make it the way they want to see it, so they just gotta make do. And then it's like, and then they get a lot of hate because it's like, well, your movie sucked. It's like, it's not my fault. The producers didn't give me no cash to make the movie.
That's true. I think a lot of the times the adaptation falls within the budget. They try so hard to focus, like with the horrifying movie Cats. They blew the budget.
Here's
on
the thing. They didn't blow the
actors.
Budget. They just had a bad idea because they had the money. They could have done 1,000 other things.
They spent it all on actors. Nobody decided to spend it on actual background. Everything looked like it was on green screen. The actors were wonderful. They knew how to sing, they knew how to dance, but also the sizing placement was wrong. Like suddenly there's tiny as like a fork on a dinner table, but like curls were big enough for her to wear or small enough. It was a weird thing. She's suddenly the size of a trash can, but tinier. So like they didn't think everything through there. That was also a bad adaptation. That was disturbing. That whole movie.
Yeah, which adaptations of, because we talked about like adaptations of books, but adaptations of like other mediums like is where it gets really finicky for me, because I think about like people when they try to make adaptations of like musicals, stage plays, or even like stuff like video games. It's just like, all right, now you're kind of stretching it, because half of what makes a musical really cool is that like is the stage presence. It's the like how they maneuver around the stage. Like I would probably buy tickets to see a movie version of Hamilton, but I don't know if I'll enjoy it the same way I enjoy Hamilton, because Hamilton on the stage is impressive because of how they maneuver on the stage and how they tell the story, versus in a movie, I'm just watching The Patriot, but with hip hop and dancing, basically, because it's just going to be people in 1776 costumes busting out in raps and R&B jams. It's not going to be the same.
Yes, but in this one, you'll actually see a black person.
That's the thing too. Is like, also, I'm not prepared to see a whole bunch of forums of white people be like, why is George Washington played by a black man? That's not accurate.
I will say one of the first musical adaptations I saw was Chicago way back when I was in high school. And I really liked that movie, and I think part of the success was whenever they would like break into song, they would be like on a set, and it was basically like you were watching a stage musical, just filmed a little more interestingly. So yep, that's my thoughts on musicals.
I think that's a good like concept. It's kind of like what's that? What's a dream within a dream? Inception. Thank you. Oh. Kind of like an Inception. You're watching the play in the movie at home. Right. I think they did really well with Mamma Mia, which is a movie based off a play, which is based off the album of singers.
Yeah.
So that's added. Yeah, ABBA. So, and I loved Mamma Mia. Pierce Brosnan cannot sing whatsoever, and I love that in Mamma Mia. No, in Mamma Mia too, they fixed that. They gave him like word singing, and he only had like 2 lines. But even with that terrible singing, I loved that movie, Mamma Mia.
But you know what, though?
I think that was well done.
Well, the thing about the musical adaptations, because me and Jonathan talked about this on a episode way back when, I think it was our Rising Genre episode. But the idea that like the problem of why musicals, like movie musicals, don't really get the same level of fanfare as like a stage musical is because the story isn't quite there. Like that's the other thing too, is like stage musicals, it's because it's on the stage, like there's more aspects that you're admiring past just the visual of like, you know, you're admiring the music, you're admiring the dance, you're admiring the ensemble, how it all ties together, moving around the sets, you know, the stage presence, all that stuff goes into factor. When you're watching a movie,
actors remembered all of their lines all at once.
True. It's like, but versus like a movie, like how we consume movies is not the same way we consume stage performances. And so I feel like movie musicals get more harsh critique for that exact reason. So it's like, if it's based off a musical that has a pretty lame story but great music, a lot of people will be like, it was aight. Like it wasn't all that. It's just like, okay, but the music, song, and dance was awesome. Yeah, but I didn't really like the story, so I don't care. And it's just like, and then it'll just be thrown to the wayside in like a pile of other movie musicals that's over there somewhere.
Well, that's kind of like, you're basically describing like a Transformers movie. It's like the story was really dumb, but like some people like watching the robots. Like,
see, but here's the difference is with the Transformers movies is that you don't like, if you're a fan of In the Heights and you go see the movie In the Heights, you're gonna get In the Heights. If you're a fan of the Transformers cartoons and then you go watch any of the Michael Bay Transformers movies, you are not gonna get Transformers cartoon. You are going to get some madman's like fever dreams in which metal has come to life and become monsters.
I will. Those poor kids who just went to see the first one.
I was one of those kids. I remember seeing that trailer.
See, I was one of the kids like, ooh, robots.
That trailer came out late at night on Adult Swim, and I saw it, and I was just like, ooh, Transformers. And then I saw the first frame of Megatron in the trailer, and I was like, that's not Megatron. What the heck is this?
I will say sometimes the adaptations having a bigger budget will ruin the film. Because going back to the play thing real quick, Jonathan was in a play called Paperless, and their only set was like a desk chair, but it was such a good play. And again, the actors remember every line. That's crazy to me. It was so well done. There's only 6 members in the cast. It was an adaptation of Macbeth. Yeah, Macbeth. And it was so well done. And I can't imagine a movie or even a TV show version of that, because they would have constant set design. So things are switching. So you're more focused on the room they're in. You're more focused on where they are at the time, or, you know, what's going around. So it does add sometimes more when plays don't need to have more. They can just have this set and do so much with it. And sometimes there's too much going on. Like within the Heights, they kept changing locations, and you had to figure out what location they were in, what was going out, what happened during the blackout, who was where. So it was a lot of jumping back and forth. When a play, in a musical, you can just have this one set and know where everything is here. You don't have to think about where everybody else is.
Mhm.
It's only like one plot, and it's always in front of you, the plot you need to focus on. So yeah, sometimes like musicals and play adaptations, I can see where they fail because of too big of a budget. I don't know what was Cats then. If Cats had the budget, and apparently I
Yeah,
don't know
I
what
believe
happened there.
Cats had, because Cats had the budget, but their idea, because to do all them CG cat people and everything, that is a lot of money. So it's like they had the budget, they just had a
Nightmare.
terrible idea. Because realistically, they should have done what Steven Spielberg wanted to do. Cats, way back. He wanted to do an adaptation of Cats for the screen, but his version was going to be animated. He's gonna have animated cats, like kind of like 2D. I think it was 2D animation. You can find some like concept for it. That I would have watched. It would have been cool. It wouldn't have had the same fanfare because no one would have been like physically dancing and stuff like in the play. But for the screen, it would have made more sense if you're not gonna do just a live version of the play, which they already had a film version of anyway. So it's like there was already a movie version of Cats. It was just a recording of the performances. So if you're going to do something different, animation was probably the way to go, to be honest. Because
Do you think animation would have helped all those like video game movies do better? Like I remember Doom with The Rock. That was bad. I mean, even a person who doesn't play the video games, that was also just a bad movie because they
well,
did
yeah,
that
that was
first
just a bad
person
movie in
style.
general. Like, take the video game out of it, it's still trash. Like,
Yeah. Well, because they did everything like first person. I was like, well, this is kind of making me a little nauseous the way you whip around all of a sudden. Gummy worms.
Video games, I think, have a harder, like, doing video game adaptations has a harder or a taller order than I think any of the adaptations does, because like most video game, because I was watching a person talk about it, they're like, most video games don't have a great story, but that's because you are a part of the story. Like, nothing happens unless you push some buttons and move the joystick around. Like, until you do that, there is no story. Like, the story ends when you stop playing or until you see the credits. So it's like, that's already hard enough, and then you're trying to make a like third person experience of a movie, of a video game, that I'm like, I'd rather be playing most of the time. Most video game adaptation movies I watch, most of the time I'm like, I would rather be home with a controller in my hand playing this as opposed to just watching it on screen right now.
What was Arcade? Arcade was a
Arcane?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
that was
League
based
of
off of
Legends.
League of Legends, yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
that
I
was a
think
video.
like that was, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I think it was just kind of like set in the world of League of Legends. So there were like species from it. I don't know that any of those characters were like established.
Oh, they are.
Legends.
Like, the
Oh,
main
yeah?
character, those main characters are all playable characters, but League of Legends, that's probably the one, those are the ones that can get away with it. Overwatch, League of Legends, Apex, like the ones that are just the hero games right now, where it's just you have a series of characters, but the gameplay has nothing to do with their backstory, who these people are, or anything like that, is probably the few who can get away with it, because none of that stuff's in the game. Like, in League of Legends, when you play League of Legends, like, you can read their backstory, but you don't get to see any of it. You just get to read it. So their benefit was, well, we've never told this story before, so we could just tell it now.
That's why I'm so curious about what the Super Mario movie is going to be.
Right.
You didn't like the first adaptation of it?
Well, no, I did not.
You're not missing much.
I'm so. Is it? I can't. Yeah.
What is your idea? What do you think they're going to try to do? Because I recall from the one back in the early 90s, they had the two Plumber brothers and Princess Peach, or the girlfriend Peach, just got kidnapped, but she kind of didn't look like a princess at all.
Well, first of all, actually, in the movie, they kidnapped Princess Daisy, not Princess Peach. Who was
My apologies.
in Super Mario Land for the Game Boy in 1990.
Forget who I'm talking to. I
Super Mario Land has the best theme. I don't care what anybody says. I love the Super Mario Land soundtrack. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine. But anytime I try and think about it, I'm like, okay, like Shigeru Miyamoto, who like oversees all the Super Mario games, is also like very involved in the movie, and like I feel like, I don't know, like the Japanese story sentimentality doesn't match like current like this is made by this studio that made the Minions movie. So like I
Oh,
feel like he's not gonna let them just do like a bunch of like fart jokes. There's gonna be
Wait,
like
so is it animated or is it like live
the new one
action?
is animated, yeah.
Okay, because I was
okay. I feel
worried
like
when
that's
they were
better.
like, we hired Chris Pratt. I'm like, Chris Pratt? Okay, are y'all making the same mistakes? Are y'all gonna do another live action Mario and we're gonna see Chris Pratt walking around like jumping on
If
mushrooms?
it was live action, Keegan Michael Key would not be playing Toad. That would be the tallest Toad that's ever existed.
If this was live action with him as Toad and Chris Pratt as Mario jumping on Toad, like I would probably grab an edible and head straight to the theater. That sounds like a great time.
Also, those casting choices reminded me of when they were like, yeah, Danny DeVito's playing Pikachu in Detective Pikachu. And I was like, why is anyone asking for Danny DeVito to play this character? Then, but at the time, I didn't know that Detective Pikachu, the game, he does sound like Danny DeVito. I'm not gonna lie. Like they have the Pikachu in that game talks, and he sounds exactly like a New Yorker. Like that's how he sounds. I'm Pikachu, and that's his character. That's his voice in the game.
Why does Pikachu sound like he's gonna mug me or sell me pizza at like 5 times the price?
That's how he sounds in the game. And so I was like, oh, never mind. Actually, y'all were right. Y'all were spot on to try and get there. But then they went with Ryan Reynolds, which he did a good job.
Yeah.
But
If I see Pikachu, I hear Ryan Reynolds' voice more so than anything.
I'm like all about just the idea of the Japanese OVAs they've done for Pokemon, where the Pokemon just sound like animals. They don't even do the like thing where they say their name, like how Pikachu says, you know, Pika Pika.
Pika.
Like that's an American thing. In Japan, they were just animals. And then when they brought it over to the States is when they started adding that aspect where they say their name.
Wouldn't the animals just be growling then? Or
Yeah, they just growl because in the game they just growl. They don't say anything. They just growl when you run into them. They either
him as a
growl.
normal cat, he doesn't make like fun sounds. Look at that.
Like
Well,
when
He
you
would be a terrible like Pokemon.
Doesn't each Pokemon have like its own like little call? It's just like
kind of, but it sounds like an actual like animal growl or something, like or like a bird call or something like that. They don't like when you run into a wild Pikachu in the tall grass, it doesn't just go Pika Pika. Like it goes.
What if you run into like a cloister or whatever? They don't roar. They're like a clam.
What about that Pokemon that's all rocks?
Yeah.
What sound with an all rock?
Listen, I'm not saying I know what they would sound like. I'm just saying that
I can see why
it wasn't as asinine when when they made the original games. Until Americans got involved, and then it had to get stupid because it's like, why does Mr. Mime just say Mr. Mime all the time?
He should be growling. That would be weird.
I think he would. I'm pretty sure the Japanese are probably just like, he talks like a normal dude. You know, he's got it. He just says, "Hey, how's it going? My name's Mr.
I feel
Mime."
like a lot of them are gonna hiss at me, and I'm not gonna enjoy that. I'm not gonna want to catch something that's hissing at me and growling at me.
Now, granted, it probably would start to get a little crazy once we hit the like, I forget what gen it was, but the gen when they clearly ran out of ideas, where Pokemon were anything from a lamp to a key ring to a washing machine to a bag of trash. Literally, it was just one of them was just a bag of trash. And then his evolved form, you would think, okay, he's a bag of trash. Maybe he evolves into something like really cool or interesting. No, he just evolves into that bag of trash being ripped open, and the trash is now formed into an even bigger monster. So he's just more trash.
That sounds more disturbing.
Don't believe you.
I don't believe you either.
Look up Trubbish right now. Pokemon.
His name is Trubbish.
His name is Trubbish. That's the like base version of Pokemon. The Pokemon is Trubbish, and then I forget what he evolves into, but he becomes like a bigger bag of trash.
I mean, I don't. Okay, I guess I see it. If you introduced me to that, I would not say that was a bag of trash, but okay, I guess he is.
Yeah, it is absolutely a bag of trash because all they did was take the word rubbish and add a T in front of it, and now he's a Pokemon.
All right, he does look like a bag of trash. I'll give you that. I don't know what's going. He looks like he has moldy cookies for hands or something.
Bulbapedia says he's a Pokemon which resembles a full dark green garbage bag with a knot at the top. So that doesn't mean that he is a garbage
Okay,
bag.
how do you explain the one that's a key ring? I forget its name even. That one's just a key ring. You can't excuse that one. One's an ice cream cone.
I can see the ice cream cone being a Pokemon, but not a bag of trash. Oh, he has a base friendship of 70. I don't know if that's good or not. I play Pokemon Go, but that's as far as I go.
Surprisingly, though, speaking of adaptation, that was one I actually enjoyed. I enjoyed Detective Pikachu. I thought it was actually pretty good.
I thought it was fine.
I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would because I was like, this is stupid. Why am I going to this? And then it was so adorable with him in his little hat. I was like, damn it, I really like it.
I was in Japan when that movie came out, and I watched it in Japan, and was introduced to the weird cultural characteristic behavior, where in Japan you just stay you just sit in the theater through all of the credits as they roll. Like nobody got up to leave at all. Which,
It's
like, you know, sometimes in a
respect.
Marvel movie you want to stay till the end to see like the secret scene. But even then, some people leave.
But
yeah.
even then, like it's probably a different thing though, because probably in Japan it's just like a respect thing versus in the States it's incentive. It's like, what's at the end of this movie?
Right.
Because if there's nothing, people leave all disappointed, like, oh, there's nothing at the end. Like, yeah, because the movie ended
so much.
That's what the credits were for. The movie's over. Why would you just automatically assume that every movie has something at the end? That's a specialty thing.
I hate the people who stay at the end of the theater. But then I did it one time when I stopped working at the theater. I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay behind now. I'm going to be that person. I got my revenge in a stupid tiny little way. With another theater.
Interesting too. It's like all the like video game adaptations. I think I just want them to stop. Like, because you asked if it'd be better if them animated. I think a lot of them it would be, or at least they'd avoid some of the pitfalls they fall into, because a lot of times they want to adapt video games that take place in like a fantastical world, but then they'll just take like the main character and be like, yeah, we could do the fantastical world they're from and, you know, do the games. Or how much fun would it actually be to see this fantastical character in New York City hanging out with like Blake Lively or something? That'd
like
be cool, right?
Oh yeah, no, like the movie Enchanted.
Right.
That's what they did. They brought Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty.
Well, Enchanted was its own thing. It was its own movie. So
but
that
it was
the
still
fun
an adaptation because they were bringing.
Well, I mean, they were playing off the tropes of princess movies, but that princess and all of her characters, those are all made for that movie.
I'm on Jerome's side here.
I still say it's a kind of an adaptation because you were bringing, because you're right, it's the tropes, but they were bringing still that style into the middle of New York City and being like, hey, what would happen if Prince Charming is like called in every single story, basically he's Prince Charming, was brought in and how he would be breaking out into song in inappropriate places and getting run over by bicycles.
See, but I think of like Enchanted the same way I do like Cool World, where Cool World is its own thing. Like they don't pull in any, at least I don't, if I remember correctly, they don't pull in a whole bunch of cartoon. Have you seen Cool World?
I'm trying to think of Cool World. No, I don't.
Cool World. Young Brad Pitt.
Yeah, Cool World is a movie with Brad Pitt in it, in which this comic book creator is like been making comic books in prison. Little does he know that world is real, and like in the like
that came out somewhere around the time Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah,
and I was a big Roger Rabbit fan more than I was in Cool World. I thought
that's because
Roger Rabbit did it better.
Well, also Roger Rabbit appealed to more people because it was like cartoon characters from like a bunch of places that you knew. but also B, Cool World was Roger Rabbit for adults, because the main villain is like a seductress who's like scantily clad the entire time. Like,
I'm sorry, you're cool with like the main villain getting steamrolled and then his eyes popping out, and he does a where he pops out and his eyes gets that is not for children.
I'm just saying, it's
Young
like
adult.
kids will know like who. Although then again, Jessica Rabbit is in Roger Rabbit, so that's, I don't know, it balances out. No, I just am tired of that trope of like constantly, or more specifically with the video game stuff, like, because even with like cartoons, like, okay, sure, because they're about to do another a Rescue Rangers movie, in which that's the premise, is that Chip and Dale are in the real world, and all the other cartoon characters like Peter Pan and MC Scat Cat and all these other cartoon characters also are in the real world, and like their cartoons were like the equivalent of their movies. Like, they just film those films, but then they exist in the real world as just characters.
Well, I think there's a difference between like this upcoming Chip and Dale and like Roger Rabbit, where it's not like the real world, because it's like a Toontown.
Oh,
so there is kind of like
true.
a fictional element to it, whereas opposed to like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like
but wouldn't that still be an adaptation of like Roger Rabbit?
Say that
because isn't that still an adaptation of Roger Rabbit, of how he's interacting with? What if he was interacting with people of our world?
Well, that's an idea. An adaptation of Roger Rabbit would be if Roger Rabbit was the main character and we're doing another Roger Rabbit movie. But the idea of taking a cartoon character and putting them in the real world, or even in like a Toon World type scenario, that's just an idea.
Yeah.
That a lot of movies have done, with or without that character.
I feel like you have a lot of restrictions on what is adaptation.
Well,
I've said that word too many times now.
Well, because adaptation is just like taking something that already exists and taking it and putting it in a new medium. So if, like, for example, Roger Rabbit's a movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, if they made a comic book based off of the movie, that would be an adaptation of Roger Rabbit as a comic book.
Or even if there were like Roger Rabbit short cartoons before the movie existed, then the movie would be a Roger Rabbit adaptation of that character, even if it's not of those stories.
Right.
So there has to be some adjustment to the main character or the main focal point of the story to be considered an adaptation.
Well, more just that it's taking something that existed as a different version of itself and changing it into something else. So like how Last Airbender was originally Avatar: The Last Airbender, a cartoon, 2D cartoon completely. Now it's been adapted into a live action movie with real people.
I can kind of see what you're saying, but at the same time, I still think that may be one, because he was thrust into a whole new. I understand he was still cartoon, but he was still thrust into this whole new world. So the environment in the background was changed for him.
Well, that's the thing. At least I don't know, because I'm actually gonna preface this by saying I'm not sure, but to my knowledge, Roger Rabbit, that movie, the character Roger Rabbit is the original character in that movie. He did not pre-exist before that film came out. But the other cartoon characters he interacts with, like Mickey Mouse, the penguins from like Fantasia, or from Mary Poppins, and all those characters, they existed. But the main character, and Jessica Rabbit too, didn't exist before.
I'll look that up. Kaylin, you were about to say something before I interrupted you. Sorry.
Just that I agree with Jerome. And they did make Roger Rabbit cartoons after that movie came out that they put in front of like VHS tapes. But yeah, I'm 99% sure.
You know what? Next time I pick the guest. All right. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, but at that point, you're not picking a guest. You just want someone to agree with you.
I would just like somebody on my side for one. The Witcher. The Witcher is a book and a game, but I don't know. And I think I think what?
And a TV show.
Oh, that's right. They had a show back. Poland had one as well.
They have another one.
Poland originally had one back in early 2000s, I believe. So the book
Gotcha.
was changed into a video game, then a show in Poland, and then The Witcher now on Netflix with Henry Cavill.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that one's also a good one because I believe The Witcher, the Netflix series, is focused more on the books. So they're all just really coming from the books.
Yeah. The only one that's a little different is the video game. The video game takes place after the books. So they kind of just took the world, but they're made up their own
I didn't
stories.
know that.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people, because like for example, in the third game, Ciri is an adult and she's got Witcher powers, and she is a Witcher and she's just out doing stuff. But that they made that decision so you could play as Ciri in the video game. But those who are fans of the books are like, that's weird because I don't think she grows up in the books. She just like stays a kid. At least the current books we have so far. I don't know if they're making more currently because I don't read the Witcher series.
No, dude, the author made them quite a bit ago. I think she's just done with the Witcher series. It's completed. I mean, the characters who pass, and you know the story is completed. To add more to the series book would be, I feel like, a little insane because they were well written. I've gotten through the first two, and they are really good. The first one drags a little bit, and I think that one's the Blood of the Elves. Or
is it because I heard the first one
Elves
is like a little hard to get through because it's not a complete book. It's a series of stories involving the Witcher world and characters.
I wouldn't say that, but it's a heavily introduction book. Like it is straight. This is like intro. This is where you meet all the characters, and that's it. There's not really an adventure. There's a lot of talking going on, and you know, getting acquainted with each other. So that one's definitely an intro book, but you definitely have to read that book to understand the other ones. So you can't skip it, even though it's just like an introduction.
Gotcha.
But the second one was so much better. There was so much more action. She writes amazingly, and if I could pronounce her name, I would. But I do have a book close by. I'll put it on the screen. Yeah. But yeah, so I know that one. That one, it's amazing that The Witcher can be changed into a video game and then into two different series that are much different, apparently, from what I've heard. Or people have said on TikTok how it's so much different from the one that was in Poland to the one that's on Netflix.
Yeah, and I hear that the one on Netflix is pretty faithful. It's not like beat for beat, but most of the stuff that happens in the story or happens in the series does happen in the books as it happened in the series. That may also mainly be due to Henry Cavill, because Henry Cavill's a huge, well, he's just a huge nerd in general, but he's a huge
literal huge nerd.
That's true. But he's a huge Witcher nerd. Like he loves the books. In fact, there's been reports that he would argue with the director and producers for scenes they wrote into the story that he's like, no, that's not how that would go down. I've read the books. What would happen is this thing. and they've been like, okay, Henry, if that's what you want to do, cool, all right.
Which it's really well done because in from what I've already read so far, from what it almost seems, if the show was probably trying to go the route they would have wanted, The Witcher would have probably been really closed off, and all of a sudden he's all sweet and humble and like, oh, this is my daughter. But in the books, it is a gradual change, and in the show, you can see that gradual change where he's like finally claiming her, and then having these soft moments where he's like, she's not mine, and somebody wants to take her, and he's like, don't touch her. But he's still not willing to like call her his daughter, and then just gradually like, yeah, she's mine, get away, she's my child. So like he helped do it well, that it was a gradual change through just one season too, which is surprising because I haven't gotten it fully in the books yet because I'm only on book 2 or 3. So already seeing that he was able to help probably keep that progression, because in stories and in shows and movies, they do that flip so quickly. Like all of a sudden the character that was supposed to be closed off, gruff and rough, is now sweet and, you know, warm and cuddly. And it's like, no, you just like fought a guy one episode ago for no reason, and now you're like the warm father. That doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I would say I was gonna ask and to piggyback off of that, the idea that, because I'm thinking about you bringing up the father-daughter thing, I'm thinking about they're supposed to be doing a show on HBO for The Last of Us, and I'm not excited to see it, despite the fact that I love The Last of Us 1 and 2. I don't care what anybody says about 2. I like 2. But I don't trust them to make the show and not fall into doing a whole bunch of tropes, because half of the fun and the beauty of the story of the first game is that it's a really great story with Joel and Ellie, but also you're playing as Joel. So the connection is that much deeper because you are essentially being that father role throughout the story, versus we've gotten, there was a time when like the whole father adoptive daughter story was like a fresh thing, but now it's like every year now we've gotten at least 3 or 4 movies that's hard and badass gets lost orphan girl and becomes a dad who has to like protect her. And so
Logan, right? Wolverine.
Logan did it. We've gotten The Witcher now. I want to say there's a Liam Neeson movie where that's a plot somewhere.
I think so too. I was just thinking Liam Neeson for some weird reason too. I'm like, he wasn't in the one I was thinking about.
Slight spoilers for Doctor Strange. He gets a little like teenage girl sidekick who's got no family. It's becoming
it might be more said to the writers that are coming into frame, that maybe in a connection to a lot of this generation, they're looking for a authoritarian figure that actually praises them. No offense. Or she can't hear me. When they may be able to better connect with the situation that's going on, because they never really received that. So that might just be a mental check on the generation that's coming into, right?
It's just that The Last of Us is like, the reason that story is so connected for a lot of people is because you're playing the story. If I just watch, I've tried, because I've watched people play The Last of Us, and even then, if it was just the playthrough and I got no pieces of that person's experience, like being like playing the game, getting to see their reaction to like the big moments, stuff like that, I'd be bored, because it's like, I've seen this movie like 1,000 times already. There's so many stories right now that we've gotten just in the past 5 years, let alone like since like the 80s, where I think that trope really popped up, is like, so it's like, that story's a dime a dozen. The only thing that made it special in Last of Us is because you were playing the game. So it's like my question out of all of that, off of that tangent, is how faithful do you think adaptation should be, though? Because at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to enjoy it for that, but that's just my filmmaking like brain thinking, versus like someone who's probably never played the game, or they have played the game and that is what they want. Like, is that fair? Like, it's an adaptation of this game, so it stands to reason it should be that story verbatim, but on screen.
Well, for me personally, I don't have the video game one, but I do have the book reference one, Good Omens. And I love that book. I read that book quite a few times before I even knew there was a TV series coming out. And I was watching some interviews with Neil Gaiman, and he's like, there were times they wanted us to change points of the story, like when the bookstore in the story gets blown up. They told him, hey, it's less money if we just don't blow it up and there's a small fire. And he thought about what Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett. I feel like it's Pratchett.
It's Terry.
Well, he who also wrote Good Omens with him. He's like, I heard his voice in my head being like, you're gonna let them ruin our book like this? You're gonna let them destroy like that? You know how important this scene is. So he's like, no, I want to blow up the building. But they did change the ending in the show, and I love the ending in the show so much more. So I think you can tell when certain plot points in the show are really important to authors and the creators, that are fine. And then sometimes they do change them that ends up fitting really well. So I think you have to have the heart of the story like secured in the book. And when that bookstore blew up, you saw the pain of that one character at the thought of losing another character. You got to feel it as he's standing in the flames and he's like begging, no, not him, not him, let him live. You got to feel that pain. So I think when it comes to like the really emotional parts and the really parts that, you felt yourself being pulled into the story. The ending, unfortunately, in the book wasn't very good. It kind of just ended. This one gave more and left you wanting more. And there's a season 2 coming out. I'm so excited. And Neil Gaiman was super, involved in the creative process of this adaptation. And he's actually has a new one coming out soon, Sandman, on Netflix. And I'm reading the comics. I'm at number 6. I'm so excited. Can't wait. And that's another adaptation that I'm really excited for. But I think with Good Omens, they did it really well. And the slight changes they did do weren't that noticeable, but you felt the love of the characters and how intertwined they were. I think again, it's that whole jumping too quick, like with the father daughter thing. All of a sudden, like, no, it doesn't have that way. You need these moments where you have that protectiveness of the character. You feel like they lost the character and they feel that pain, so they can express it properly, and so you can also feel it with them. So I think that's how, at least from my point of thought.
I think it's also really something to take into consideration is how like popular the original book is, or source material. Because like my favorite movie of all time is The Iron Giant, which is based off of a collection of short stories called The Iron Man. And they're almost like folktale, and there's just like no connection between the movie and that book other than there's a giant.
Let's say, was it about an alien robot?
I think his hand pops off at one point, which also happens in the movie, but like it's so, the connection is so tenuous. You just have to like, is the source material, I mean, in that instance, I don't know why they decided to like
they just wanted
claim
to do
that they were adapting that book. They could have been like, yeah, we're doing The Iron Giant. It's about a giant robot. That's not a copyrightable idea. So yeah.
Also, I've never heard of the books for the Iron Man or the Iron Giant. So that's also, yeah, you're right. It's not popular. They didn't need to tie themselves to that.
Right. Yeah, and that was something that came to mind with what was that? It was a movie that came out on IMAX. It was an adaptation of a video game, and it starred The Rock. I know that's like
Rampage.
Rampage, which is just like, it was the same kind of idea. It's like,
wait, that was a video game?
Yeah. And it was just like a giant monster movie is like a generic enough idea. Why did you pay money to like get the license?
Because the game is just, you play as one of 4 monsters, one of which is a gorilla, a wolf, I forget the other 2, and then you just smash buildings to get points. That's the game.
Yeah.
That's it.
I didn't know that was a game. I want to play that now. I love that movie. It was terrible. It wasn't great, but it was still a fun movie. That's where I put it out, because it was at the time me and Jonathan were really into The Walking Dead. Morgan, what's his name? Dean Morgan? Morgan Dean? Damn it.
Oh, Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He has a lean to him. He literally leans backwards when he talks. And like he's going at like an almost a 90-degree angle.
Is that, I don't know if that's his normal walking stance.
No,
that is the way he wanted to play Negan, where he kept leaning all the time.
Right, no, but I used
to watch leaning all the time?
I used to watch him in Supernatural too. He has a lean to him, a natural lean, and he just does that. And I think with Negan, he accentuated it.
In Watchmen, he doesn't lean.
In Supernatural, he does. And in Rampage, he does. So I got 2. What do you got, Jeremy?
Rampage?
Yeah.
I have forgotten almost every frame of that movie. The only things I remember are the fact that Dwayne The Rock Johnson's on screen with a big albino gorilla. That's pretty much it. And there's like a wolf that flies. Like that's
World of Warcraft, they got a movie adaptation, didn't they?
You know what's funny too about World of Warcraft is that they were, because I remember for the longest time I was like, if you're gonna do the game, just do the game. And World of Warcraft was like, don't worry, my boy, we got you. And they did. Like, that movie is just the game from start to finish. watch, and people still didn't watch it. Like even fans didn't even give up. World of Warcraft did not come and watch that movie, which I was like, that's a damn shame. Like they gave you exactly what you wanted, and y'all still didn't support this movie.
I think I recall Kaylee watching it, and then afterwards I was like, "Oh, how was it?" She's like, "I watched it because it was free." I was like, "Fair enough." That's all the review I got.
Yeah, which we got more video game adaptations coming too, because it's like they got I think the BioShock movie is finally, I think they said they finally got a script for it. Which I've always said it's BioShock's doable. I've always said just do Titanic, but in BioShock. Because there's no, much like all the hero movies like Arcane and stuff, like we don't know what happened to Rapture. We haven't seen it anyway visually. What happened to Rapture before the first game, like how it fell into disarray and madness. So that could be the movie. It'd be fun. It'd be a horror film, or you could make it like a tragic romance. Either way, it'd probably be interesting to see.
Speaking of video game adaptations, I do have to give a shout out to a new Netflix show called Battle Kitty, which is not a video game adaptation, but feels like it, because it feels like you're playing a video game when you watch it, which is an experience I've never had before.
I've only ever had that experience one other time, and it's when I watched Hardcore Henry.
Okay, I want to hear more about Battle Kitty. Is it kitties or kitties?
It's about a kitty and an orc, and they fight monsters. And it's a Netflix interactive, so you have to like play it on a computer or a TV that's but it's not like choose your own adventure. You just have to like as you watch episodes, you unlock new ones, which is a very minor distinction. But like the same way you progress through a video game, like you unlock new levels as you play through new levels. Mm-hmm. And it's the graphical style is very much like a video game. The animation is very much like a video game. You can see like the polygons on some characters, and it's I highly recommend it. But,
see, there's another one like that on Netflix. It's Escape the Underkeeper or Undertaker. I think I would have rather done the interaction with Battle Kitties, because the other one was dark. You're escaping from somebody who's just basically trying to bury you. Yours sounds more fun and enjoyable.
It is fun and
less,
enjoyable.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the ending. There's one thing I wanted to mention beforehand, because you had said it and I didn't know it. They're making a movie about a Twitter thread.
Yeah, they've made a couple actually.
Yeah.
The one that's the most famous is At Zola, which I don't know much about it because I haven't seen the movie yet. But apparently, as far as like the movie, but the Twitter thread it's based off of is there was this Twitter At Zola, in which this girl was like sharing on her Twitter this story of how she almost basically got like sexually trafficked, and met like through meeting this girl who she went on vacation with, who was like this girl she barely knew, and then it led to a whole lot of other stuff. And A24 got a hold of it, and I think some other writer, and they made it into a movie.
I'm not surprised it was A24.
Which I thought was super interesting. I'm like, okay, like it's because it said that it's like based off the legendary Twitter thread, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Based off what? That's so weird. But apparently the movie is really good, even though I think the original woman who's like who was the person
Zola.
posting on Twitter, she had issues with the movie. I think for like crediting reasons, not so much like the adaptation, but rather just I don't think they credited her properly, her story. So she had an issue with that. But I hear it's good.
I did not know that, and I'm not surprised A24 did it. I'm surprised it exists, but when you mentioned that, I was like, all right, no, okay, I could see them doing that, definitely.
Have you guys seen the movie Adaptation?
Only once. It's been a long time.
For real?
Yeah, so Nicolas Cage.
It's a movie about a screenwriter trying to adapt a book. and it's great.
Mhm.
Nicolas Cage plays. Wait, is it Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, it's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah,
He plays like
and he
two
plays
versions of
twins.
himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's. I recommend it.
I thought you were pulling my leg, but okay. I'm not a fan of Nicolas Cage too much. There's a movie about Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, the unbearable weight of tremendous talent or something like that.
Talent.
Of
Yeah.
massive talent. I want to see it.
Isn't
Looks
that
funny.
technically an adaptation about his life?
No,
Is the
he's
source
playing
material
a fake version of himself. He's not even playing
right?
himself.
So it's a fake version of himself. So it's based off his life. It's taking adaptation and making him into more because
Curb Your Enthusiasm an adaptation of Larry David's life?
a little bit, yeah. His life is not that interesting.
Jerry
Seinfeld, an adaptation of Seinfeld's life.
It definitely is because you're telling me a comedian who barely worked was affording that type of apartment in New York City. No, thank you, sir. I will not buy those eyes.
The weirdest adaptations to me, though, even more so than like video games and stuff, or even Twitter threads, is the ones based off board games. Of which
I was going to bring up with Battleship. It's just like
only one that's good is Clue. That's the only board game adaptation movie that's actually good. The rest of them are so either weird or bad.
Well, Jumanji wasn't bad.
Yeah, Jumanji wasn't a board game before the movie came out. They made the board game after the movie came out.
That doesn't count. Yeah. Jumanji.
Yeah, there's a children's book called Jumanji.
There was a children's book? I thought it was based off the board game.
No, it was a children's book. Then they made the movie. Then they made the board game.
My whole life is a lie.
Yeah,
never
Zathura,
thought about
right?
that.
Yeah.
I never thought about the Zathura.
Yeah, Zathura never really caught on. It wasn't as good as Jumanji.
It was still good though.
I enjoyed the movie. I thought the movie was cute.
But yeah, I know. I especially the part in Battleship where they have the buoys and the buoys become like, yeah, shoot a missile at J18, and I'm like, are you serious?
So did they graph the whole ocean then?
Yes, they graph the ocean with buoys and they label them like the board game.
I want to see an adaptation of XO. I feel like they can find a way to do that properly. X and O.
Oh, like tic-tac-toe?
Yeah, tic-tac-toe.
I am curious to see. Well, it's funny because Vin Diesel apparently wants to do an adaptation of Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
They already did that. It was called Real Steel.
See, well,
I was like, wasn't there already a robot fighting movie?
The movie is going to be about this father who is trying to connect with his like estranged son during a time where robots fight each other. Now I know what you're thinking. That's just a description of Real Steel. But what you don't know is that that's also the same exact description of the Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie. And I was like, that movie exists. Why are you wasting time? The only difference is that the Rock'em Sock'em Robots are supposed to be war bots. They're not going to be boxers. They're going to be like war robots. It's
so
the only
not
difference.
Really Rock'em Sock'em.
Right, because they already did it and it's called Real Steel.
You know what? Honestly, somebody with a kind of an estranged father, you don't have to go through those things. Just a phone call a week. You're good. That's like all that's required. All right. As somebody speaking with one, just a phone call a week. You really don't have to build giant. In fact, take that time you're building these weird robots. Nice dinner. That's all you got to do.
Also, there was like a gag in one of the Toy Story movies that involved some Rock'em Sock'em Robots, and it was like the best adaptation you needed because they just like were like talking and got in an argument and started fighting.
Just start fighting. Which I was thrown for a loop when I read that article about Vin Diesel because I was like, what are you talking about? I thought we already made that movie because it's called Real Steel. Like it's about robots boxing. That's all Rock'em Sock'em Robots is. You're telling me that wasn't the Rock'em? And then I looked it up. Apparently it's not. It's just an original story. About
it's not really an original story. Clearly it's not an original story.
Well, it's not based off Rock'em Sock'em Robots. It's just they just like a person just wanted to tell a story about boxing robots one day, and it just so happens to line up with the fact that they're making a Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie.
Well, just wait till the end of the Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie when it introduces Hugh Jackman's character from Real Steel into the movie and the whole expanded universe.
The whole thing blows up. Funny enough, the only like toy turned into a movie that I would be cool with seeing is Hot Wheels. Which I
Sure.
know those are
Isn't
probably
that
just
just
Fast and Furious
NASCAR?
movies,
Would
but
that just be NASCAR?
no, NASCAR is different. Hot Wheels cars are like things that could
Cool.
never be real cars. Like,
Yeah.
like the way their design is,
You,
you
oh,
would not drive that down the street.
okay, then yeah, like Fast and the Furious, you wouldn't drive a
Fast and Furious
car,
is
you
the
know, a
closest
rocket
it would
ship.
be.
They made a car into a rocket ship in the last
But
one.
I just want to see like them ride down that like crazy track, like in Green Lantern when he like has the car. In fact, that Green Lantern scene became a Hot Wheels track. um, but I want to see that, but like a whole movie of just like Hot Wheels driving down crazy tracks and like volcanoes and stuff.
There's got to be some direct-to-DVD Hot Wheels movies.
Oh, there are plenty of cartoon direct-to-DVD Hot Wheels.
Oh, you want like a live action thing?
Oh,
going
a live
on.
action one. I want one that's real.
I feel like that budget would be a little bit much. Probably. Wait, wouldn't that actually be kind of Transformers? Because they're still driving those like
No, because the cars
Transformers,
don't
and then
become
they
anything
change.
else. They're just cars. they don't become nothing else.
You know, it's like part of Transformers. They're the crazy cars that are not street legal.
Yeah, the
It's
only
Transformers meets Fast and Furious.
Do you think toys technically are considered adaptation?
I think
Because-
so. Like the upcoming Barbie movie, that's an adaptation.
I guess that's true. Because I'm thinking about like, for example, the Lego movie, where like Legos are just like a franchise of just a bunch of other franchises
Mm-hmm.
Well, they
into a
didn't used to
toy.
be.
And you didn't used
Legos
to
Oh
are
be,
yeah,
on
they,
them.
but
and there are like original Lego sets still that are not based off of anything.
Legoland.
Yeah.
Legoland is an adaptation of Legos. Makes it into a whole magical land.
That I can get behind.
that's true. I mean, I would say that the Avatar theme park is an adaptation of the Avatar movie.
I want to go to Legoland. I think it would be so much fun.
Real quick,
I
I know
love
this is off topic, but I feel like we're not going to have another time we talk about it, so let's talk about it right now. Did y'all see the Avatar 2 trailer?
I did see it when I went to see Doctor Strange.
I did not, but I have seen the posters. They look very human almost, and there's a lot. It's a lot brighter blue this time.
Well, yeah,
That's all I see from the
newer
posters.
technology. I mean, it looked good back then, and it still holds up now, but it looks even better now. I was impressed, like, cause it's playing. So when you go see Doctor Strange, Alex, you'll see it in theaters because it's playing. That was like the big news story is like, if you're going to see Doctor Strange 2 in theaters, be prepared for the Avatar 2 trailer. And they played it in theaters for all of 2 days until they released it into the internet. But I appreciate that. I thought that was kind of cool. But I watched it and I was just like, I'm not gonna lie, it looks good. I like not in the sense of like I'm excited for the story because I don't know what the story is. There's no story in this trailer. But I mean, as far as visuals, it looks good. It looks like gorgeous. Even the underwater scenes look beautiful. I was like, man, I'll be damned. I might just see this movie just to see how it looks on screen, like as a full movie.
I thought it looked fine.
I wasn't a fan of the first Avatar, honestly. And I feel like I'm going to end up just being suckered into watching this one, either for a review or because one of our friends is going to be like, hey, do you want to go see it? And I'm like, well, I am due to like socially be around people. It is about like my tune-up time to be around people. So like, yeah, I'll go with you.
Well, I mean, when I watched the first Avatar, I only watched it because I had no interest in seeing it until all my friends at school came back and they were like, yeah, you gotta watch Avatar. It looks so cool. Like we watched it in 3D. It looks so good. And I was like, all right, well, let me go see what it looks like in 3D. And I watched it and I was like, this does look good. This is incredible. So I'm like, so it's not like I was watching the first one for story anyway. So I have no problem buying a ticket for the second one just to see how it looks in 3D. If it looks good.
Yeah. My best friend at the time, she was like, oh, we got to go see this. We got to go see this. My first thought was, it's 4 hours long. You're going to make me sit in a theater for 4 hours?
It was 3 hours.
It was 3 hours.
It was like over. It was like
felt like
almost 4.
No, it felt like 4.
Like 4.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna hold you.
I watched the whole thing. She fell asleep halfway through. So I had like a friend drooling on my shoulder as I'm like watching the movie. And I'm like, all right, it's very pretty, but like I did not enjoy the story at all. I didn't enjoy the movie in general.
I mean, it just looks so incredible. Like I mean, even better than Lion King, and I thought Lion King looked good. Um, this movie has like impressed me thoroughly. I mean, it's James Cameron, so instantly the visuals are already going to be there. I even love the visuals for Alita Battle Angel 2, and he did that or helped produce it anyway. So that was it was a given that it was going to look good. I just didn't anticipate how much. I was like, even the underwater scenes, the way the hair flows and all the creatures and stuff, the textures. I was just like, God damn, like you done did it again. This feels like when
the movie's gonna look good. Yeah,
like when you feel this. I was like, is this what it feels like when like you like, you know, eat a really good dish from an amazing chef, and then you go and someone else cooks it and it's still good, but then the original person comes back and you're like, oh, I forgot how good this tastes. when the master cooked it. Like The Apprentice is good, but when you cook it, it's a whole different other experience.
See, that one I could relate more with, because there is a dish I can only properly get in Chicago. I make it at home, or I have somebody else make it. It's good, but it's nothing like over there.
Mm-hmm.
Over there, it's perfect. But
that's Avatar 2. It's the original pizza.
Well, time to wrap up, and I'm gonna go eat dinner after this too now. So because
yeah. Yeah, comment below, audience. Tell us, what are your favorite adaptations and what your thoughts are on adaptation. Do you think if it's really faithful, that's what you want, or do you prefer when they like divert and do something original and different? I mean, heck, we got a whole Lord of the Rings series coming that ain't got nothing to do with these books. They're going to just start doing whatever they want to do. So, you know, could be fun. It could be interesting. So comment below. Tell us what you think. Also want to thank you, Kaylin, for being here to be a part of this discussion.
Of course, yeah. Thank
podcast.
You.
Do you have anything?
Able to adapt my schedule. Okay.
the juice is gone.
It still made me cringe, if that helps.
Socials. Let's start with you, Kaylin. We'll start with the guests.
Sure.
Do you have anything you want to plug and stuff?
My name is Kayla Knowles. That's also my Instagram, KALENKNOWLES. You can see my art and other links you can find there. You can just Google my name also. I'm out there. That's it. That's all my social media.
My favorite of your artwork is your stick figures. Like, I would enjoy that every morning.
Yes, which there is a book version, folks. If you want to buy the book version of the stick figure comics, it's out there.
Stick forms. Here it is. If you're watching, listeners, too bad. You're missing out.
Which I still need to pick up a copy. I just haven't had time. So, like, put one to the side for me. And you're supposed to sign it, too.
I have a large stack next to me. Don't worry.
All right. What about you, Jerome? Where are we finding you?
You can find me at Not Jerome Rhett on Instagram, as well as at RoboZoo Media and at Jerome_the_show to find out more about what I got going on creatively. And also, in regards to following The First Ones to Die, you can follow us everywhere at The First Ones to Die on all our social medias, as well as on all our audio platforms and on YouTube as well at The First Ones to Die to find all types of extra content like mini reviews, book reviews, video versions of all the podcasts, and so much other stuff that you can find there as well.
And speaking of the book reviews, I just recently got the next one. It's the Hacienda, which kind of bothers me because it's supposed to be La Hacienda, and it's just like, anyway, the Hacienda by Isabella Canas. It looks already to be like a good book, so I'm excited to review it with Jonathan. And Jonathan, who is our other host, you can find him at Jonathan Keys on Instagram and Twitter, wherever you please. Remember. And you can find me at Alex and Nobody on TikTok, on Instagram. Those are mainly the two I am on, and we are hopefully starting to build up our Twitch now, which Alex and Nobody is my Twitch name as well. I'm gonna go try playing some random games, probably some scary ones because I love being scared. But you can also find The First Ones to Die at Twitch too, where hopefully we will be playing more games.
Yep. I don't know what the first game will be, but I'm thinking it's going to be possibly Inside. just because I've been dying to
Yes.
play that game.
Oh my gosh,
so,
yes.
I have
I
no
love
idea
it.
what that is, but I will play it.
One of my favorite games of all time.
Well, it's only single
Kaylin,
player.
maybe you can play with
but
us.
We can be together and y'all can commentate as like because I have it on my computer already. I already bought it, so y'all can
Well,
be
I
present.
can just come over to your place and take over. I mean,
That's true. Yeah,
I'm a pretty dominant force.
I'm down to have video game night, or we just like I'm sure I will die plenty of times. So we'll swap sticks, as we used to say back in the day.
If you guys start streaming inside, I'll be in the comments. Just be like, "Cool. Oh, this part's cool. Oh, cool. Oh, cool."
If you could like also comment about what I should be doing,
No.
that would also. Oh, come on.
If you die, I'll go. If you die, I'll just laugh.
Thanks.
But
I'm sure you and many will.
But yeah, next week, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Tune in. We're gonna have Jonathan here. I don't know if we'll have a special guest, but if we do, you'll see them or hear them. So tune in next week for that. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.